Chapter 9, Not So Sweet Water. 1912 brought a pleasant, irresponsible, sunny mid-May morning to Campbellton, Georgia, and the children of the Chattahoochee took full advantage of it. The river swept gently around the broad prominence on which the community rests, etching out a languid semicircle against the lush cotton and cornfield banks. Sunlight, brilliant in the crystal air, lit streaks of myriad colors in the water, from deep purple to blue and the clearest emerald. Overhead the sky glowed in a golden light that contrasted sharply against the pale blue background. Only a spotty wisp of whiteness obscured the celestial vision. Spangles of Cherokee roses dotted the terrain. Anchored amidst the groves of wild violets bursting in pale purple bloom, they glittered the pine-nettled banks. A few dogwoods littered the forest lawn with recently dropped blossoms. Crab trees burst in riotous splendor as honeysuckle vines carpeted the forest floor. A faint fragrance of sweet shrub filtering across the waters amused the children's olfactory senses. Poised almost in the center of the stream, Jennifer's yellow dinghy, now appropriately christened the Chattahoochee Princess, bounced excitedly amidst the commotion of four rowdy passengers. Jennifer was steering, as she unmasterfully handled the rudder in broad, repetitious motions of equally extreme gyration. Dewey had charge of the crew and cargo, a sufficiently large picnic basket packed full of delicious goodies. He stoically surveyed the wild confusion of his feminine crew. Rady and Liz had been pressed into galley service and floundered as they figured out the insidious demands of marine travel. "Stroke, stroke," Jenny called, and the impressed girls responded with alternating, uneven, and somewhat dangerous swings of their respective oars. First one, and then the other, in random, unsuccinct motions. The commandant at the helm realized that some alternate arrangement would have to be made if the crew were to arrive at their chosen destination within a reasonable length of time. Dewey, too, sensing the need for some decisive action, spoke first. "All right, this will never do. Good grief, a slow boat to China would beat us in a race over Niagara Falls. Rady, you take the rudder. Liz, you be the watchman here in the bow. Jeannie and I will handle the muscle power." Once the girls were quieted, they quickly agreed to Dewey's suggestions and fixed themselves in the appropriate locations. Jenny, inwardly, secretly relished sitting so close to her boyish neighbor, and was pleased to see Rady somewhat making a fool of herself, at least in respect to getting things done. 2 weeks had passed quickly since her father and Mr. Fouts had launched the Princess somewhat unceremoniously into the Anahuac Creek headwaters. It was only a matter of time until Jenny had convinced her father that she was an accomplished riverman and could handle her craft in the turbulent and treacherous waters of the Chattahoochee's main, albeit lethargic stream. The group invested hours in imaginary exploits that carried them up and down and over every inch of the river within sight of the ferry. It was only natural for Jenny to propose an adventure beyond the headwater of the bend above town, which the respective parents eventually succumbed to allowing. So this beautiful morning, Jenny and her crew planned to paddle upstream for a picnic at Factory Shoals on Sweetwater Creek, a substantial but not unprecedented journey. Should their destination prove too ambitious, it would be a simple enough matter to turn back and float home. But neither Jenny nor Dewey was the type of youngsters who were likely to miss out on 1 ounce of adventure generated in their vigorous imaginations. Lizzie, too, was in fine mood, and had been primed with a number of late-night campfire stories about the insidious Captain Butner. As they neared the ferry crossing and prepared to slide under the ropes, the sound of hooves and carriage wheels clamored down the dusty road. Wheeling up to the crossing, a loud feminine banter pierced the air. "It's the Cantrells," Dewey noted aloud. He gently stood up in the boat to clasp a sturdy hanging branch mooring the boat while the Cantrells forded ahead of them. The belligerent Mrs. Cantrell barked for Slippery Joe to hurry in his efforts. "We're late already for the sewing circle," she announced. The carriage, like an overgrown flower pot, flowed with bright dresses, parasols, and fluttering scarves. They were all frail, fine-boned women, pale of skin and craggy of face. Grace, whose name was a misnomer if ever there was one, with her raven tresses, Helen with her tightly buttoned cravat, Betsy and Janice with their youngish pigtails braided and tied with colorful ribbons, argued with pitched resonance. The mother, well turned out in a tight black coverlet, closely tailored to resemble a riding coat, barked instructions aristocratically. Their wealth and prominence in the county, obtained at the expense of so many less fortunate, was routinely promenaded in well-considered and frequently orchestrated displays. Onlookers just as routinely criticized it. Their portage might have passed uneventfully had not the loud-mouthed Grace spied the handsome Dewey Favors after lightly slapping her younger sister in a dispute. She had taken of late to teasing the budding manhood of the town's most respected family. In an effort to embarrass him, she hailed, "Hi, you sweet choir boy there, singing any solos this week at church?" Red-faced and a bit vexed, Dewey threw back a semi-indignant "No." "What a shame," Grace mouthed. "He does such a nice doxology." Choosing to finally acknowledge Jennifer, whom she had first spotted miles up the road, Grace remarked, "And Jennifer Stanhill, my, how you have been. My, how have you been? Haven't heard much from you since you dropped out of school. Betsy and Janice were full of themselves with news that day. Think you'll be heading for Atlanta now to work in the mills?" "No," Jenny flared back. "I'm planning to study with Reverend Atwood for some tests to see if I can handle advanced work. Not sure what kind of school I'm looking for. One with respectable, intelligent students, though, that's for certain," Jenny continued. The empty-headed Grace, not realizing she and her less-than-scholarly sisters had been disparaged, blared on, "I'm sure you'll find a dignified place in this world, Jenny Stanhill. If we can be of any assistance, don't hesitate to ask. By the way, Abigail foaled this morning, a beautiful spunky stallion with legs a mile long. You and Trissler must ride over and see him soon. Haven't seen you riding much. Is Trissler up for the county fair?" Jenny had defeated Grace and her high-priced horseflesh Thanatopoulos in the junior ladies' event at last year's fair. It was Grace's final year before moving up to the seniors, and Trissler's innate talent sorely duped her. Not expecting to be challenged in the senior events this year, she already relished the notoriety coming to her as the recognized leading horsewoman of the county.